Uh, Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Computer History Museum and the Vintage Computer Festival. We're so happy to have you all here today. VCF is one of our truly cherished activities that we have all year round here. It's one of my favorite, actually it probably is my favorite activity. And the reason is that we get to experience what it's like at the level of the grassroots. So to see what people are actually doing in the community. And some of the things that exhibitors at VCF do, as I'm sure you'll appreciate, are really unique. I mean, where else can you go to see 10 Apple I's or an IMSI that is on the web, or a teletype machine that is printing out live Twitter feed, a teletype machine from 1930, printing out tweets, live tweets. It's only this here at Vintage Computer Festival. So I hope you do all appreciate how unique this activity is. And we welcome you all here. So I'd like to welcome you formally on behalf of the museum and our CEO, Daniel Lewin. Some of you may recognize that name. Daniel was a major figure at Apple and Next, and then at Microsoft, and he's with us now as our CEO. We're undergoing dramatic changes, changes that you'll see both at the institution, but in the first instance on our website. You'll see a completely redesigned website. I'm sure many of you have commented in very delicate ways how our website is maybe a little not quite up to modern specs. It doesn't look that good on mobile devices, for example. So anyway, that's completely being redone. Within the next 6 months, you'll see a vastly changed website with easier access to all the content of the museum. If you're looking for a specific artifact or some software that you need to restore your project, whatever, it'll be much easier to find that stuff. We're also doing a series of longer form essays, so the curators here at the museum will be writing longer stories about computing in the community, such as VCF, and how it shapes society, how computing has shaped the way we look at the world. And I don't mean from today's perspective, because a lot of people say that, but I mean from the very beginning. How did computing, what were the problems computers were trying to solve, and how has that changed over time? It's very different. The problems people were solving in the 60s and 70s are very different from what they're doing now. So just a quick rundown. We have 3 buildings in the museum. This is our main building. We call it Galactic Headquarters. And we have 2 other buildings, a research center in Milpitas and an environmentally controlled storage facility in Fremont. And we actually have over 100,000 hardware objects, 2 linear miles of documentation. How many people here have heard of bit savers? Okay, great. So that is a fantastic archive run by one of our curators, Al Kossow, and there are millions and millions of pages of historical computer documentation that are absolutely critical to people such as yourselves trying to restore old systems or just learn about them. There's really literally no one else in the world that has saved this material, and it's basically gone now, and Al saved it. The Library of Congress sent him a notice last year saying, your website is of such cultural importance that we want to bring it into the Library of Congress as a permanent archive. So that's pretty cool. Our storage facility is really fun. We don't have tours for it right now, but you can see everything there from an Apple Pen, the new thing for iPads, to a Cray C90, which is a computer the size of a carport. It's absolutely a giant circle and weighs about 10 tons. So out of those 100,000 objects, we have, as you can imagine, a lot of really interesting items ranging in size from small objects to giant things. Finally, I'd just like to thank the amazing people at the Vintage Computer Federation, Corey Cohen, Eric Klein, Jeff Brace, Michael Brutman, and Evan Koblenz. They're all just an amazing team of guys. And I think at this point, we'll just open it up to questions. If anyone has anything they'd like to ask me, I'm happy to answer. So thank you. Oh, there you go. I feel like Donahue.
Hello? Okay.
There you go.
About a week or so ago, I was in the Seattle Living Computer Museum, and
Whoops, I think that's me.
it struck me just how interactive that experience was, and I was wondering if in the future of this museum, there might be more interactivity involved. Thank you.
Right, that's a great question. Well, we do have two demo labs right now for where you can see an IBM, two computers from 1959. Are you familiar with those at all? Oh, okay. So downstairs you can see two computers. Downstairs you can watch two computers. One is an IBM 1401 and another is a DEC PDP-1 computer. They're both from 1959, but the interesting thing is they serve different audiences. So the 1401 was a business machine made for small businesses. In fact, in 1965, half of all computers in the world were IBM 1401s. You may not have known that. That was before the IBM System 360. So 1401 is a phenomenally significant machine in the history of computing, and we have one running. You can go there, punch your name, for example, on cards and have it printed out on a giant printer, all completely authentic 1959 vintage era equipment. In the room beside it, you have a PDP-1, which is really call it a single user computer. Digital Equipment Corporation's one of their earliest machines. And that's really, in some ways you call it a personal computer because it's only one person that uses it. But you can play Space War in real time, which is written, in fact, for that very machine. And you can play against two of the original people who developed Space War, Pete Sampson and Steve Russell. They're still alive, they're still running. So it's like getting a tutorial from Michelangelo, maybe, or maybe Bob Ross, on a personal tutorial on how to do painting. So that's part of what we offer. But you're right, they have up at LCM much more of a hands-on imperative to everything they have on display. They really want it running. We're not really quite able to do that just for size and space constraints. We also have a museological, philosophical explanation for doing that, which is that we really don't want to intervene in an object unless we have a very specific purpose. So unless, for example, we want to put it on display. And so for now, we don't really have any more display space, so we're stuck with those two. But they are great experiences, and I encourage you to check them out. Thank you. Oh, okay.
This is a really simple question, but I'm really curious about how you're archiving all of the computer equipment and how you make sure that everything stays in a condition so that you could later put it on display or do whatever. I'm really curious about how you guys are doing that, or if there's an approach to that.
Right. Well, is this loud enough? So it's very dependent on the object type. So we have roughly 5 categories of objects: hardware, software, magnetic media like videotapes, still images, and ephemera, things like t-shirts, coffee mugs, all the swag. And so the decisions you make about conservation of each one of those depends on which category of those it falls into. So for example, Intel used to give away bottles of champagne for certain, Peter will remember this, certain events. And should we leave that bottle on the shelf or should we drain it? And this is what we spend our time thinking about. And so it's a great question. And for every object, we have to go through this process of can we leave it alone or does it need to be conserved? So conservation is actually very expensive and time consuming. And we would only do it if something were going on display properly. So it would really look nice. Yeah, thank you.
And sort of as a follow-on to her question, what do you do about hardware where you've got things like capacitors that explode over time and so need to be conserved in order to even exist any longer?
Right. I didn't quite hear all your question, but I think
Okay.
yeah, I think I get it. So it's basically about components that decay, right? So
And in so doing harm to the things around them.
absolutely. So, you know, we don't touch capacitors, but we do remove batteries. We had a guy spend an entire year go through every single one of our objects and remove all the batteries. And that was, you know, quite a commitment by the museum, but you have to do it. We all know what happens to batteries if you leave them in equipment. Thank you. That's a great question. Yeah.
I wondered what the relationship is between the museum and Bruce Damer's DigiBarn.
Oh, that's a great question. It's a very friendly relationship. We loan each other objects. We're good friends. We haven't, I think we've actually cooperated once when we had Wesley Clark in here to show the link. And I believe that was at an earlier Vintage Computer Festival, and Bruce and the museum and Wes Clark, and it was held here, and they actually got the link running again. So, but we do cooperate, and there's a lot of mutual good feelings between the two of us. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the show. Yeah.